Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm looking at Incredible Hulk number 346. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be wrapping up the Todd McFarlane era on the Hulk. But before I dive into today's book, I just want to say thanks to all the viewers, support. Every like, comment, and subscription is appreciated. So if you're enjoying positive comic content, please consider hitting thumbs up. Comments are always encouraged. And hey, if you haven't already, why not subscribe so you never miss a future video? I created this channel to entertain, inform, and maybe even inspire you to read some comics. If you think that's a good message and think other comic fans need it in their feeds, then like, shares, and subs. Tell the YouTube algorithm to put it in front of them. Now, let's dive in. So this is Todd's swan song on the Hulk. As we can see, this is not really Todd doing this cover, is it? It's Erik Larsen, and Todd is inking it, which you can see in the inks, but this is definitely not Todd's Hulk. It's a little skinnier, a little lankier, definitely not what we've been used to over these past few months. But we do get a Todd leader here in the UPC box. Again, that's something you miss out on if all you do is collect newsstands. This cover, as a kid, did not excite me. The way the last issue ended, with the gamma bomb going off and the Hulk appearing to be trapped in it, this almost looked like an emaciated Hulk to me. So I thought the Hulk was going to be alive and just like weakened somehow. And the art change was very noticeable. I do like this like little yellow highlight though that's being hit on him. The brown cover, not the greatest. Betty's hair kind of blends into it. I'm not sure what was going on with the three figures in the front. It just, as a kid, this cover didn't jump. It was never one of my favorite covers by any stretch. And Erik Larsen would have been new to me at this point because Todd was still doing Amazing Spider-Man at this point, and I wouldn't really know Erik Larsen with any kind of regularity until he does his Spider-Man run. So I don't even know that I looked in the credits of this necessarily. I probably did because I'd gotten used to McFarlane and I'd learned McFarlane's name and I was already following him on Amazing Spider-Man. So I'm sure I looked to see who did this one. But we'll jump on in. Now, Todd is credited with doing layouts in this, and I do see that in some of it, but this is very much Erik Larsen's art. This is an Erik Larsen face. Everything about this to me now, knowing Erik Larsen, is his work. It's his. But we will see stuff throughout the book that is McFarlane-y in the layouts. So as I said, the last issue ended with the gamma bomb exploding. Clay had called S.H.I.E.L.D. in, just before that happened. And so now he's having to testify in front of Congress about why he went rogue, about the bomb going off, and everything involved and that's built up to this point. So he's in front, and he's kind of grandstanding to some degree, explaining what had happened, why he went rogue with the bombs. You see different people across America, including his brother, watching. This has a little bit of a McFarlane layout to me. Less so here. Maybe so, but we've got this empty black panel, just kind of odd. Big pages. Most of this issue is going to recap the storyline, but with, a little bit of flair of people's perspective of things. So the senator is asking like what Nick Fury knew. This looks like a McFarlane layout. And this is recap of around issue 330. Well, it even says up here, 337, when the Hulk is telling Quartermain about the gamma bomb stockpiling. This is so McFarlane-y, but very Larsen-y. The layout is McFarlane, but it's definitely Larsen's like more angular, I almost want to say more aggressive strokes. Who was the inker? I forgot to look. Back to Jim Sanders the second, or the third. Jim Sanders the third is inking. So we've seen Jim Sanders inking McFarlane through a lot of this, and now that I paid attention to who the inker is, I do notice that. You've got heavy lines. Jim Sanders is a heavy inker. Again, very McFarlane profile view layout. This is what we didn't get in the earlier part of the story is what was Nick Fury? What did he know? How was he involved with the gamma bombs and just S.H.I.E.L.D.'s general involvement? And it does make note up here somewhere. right here. This story takes place before the events in Nick Fury versus S.H.I.E.L.D. I have a trade paperback of that, and I'll be honest, I've only read like the first issue of it, and I could never get through it. It's very dry. Anyway, yeah, so we go back to Nick Fury, who kind of gives Clay like a tough love pep talk, I guess you'd say. Clay doesn't say what's going on with the gamma bombs yet or anything, but Fury says, I can tell something's going on. You're a good man. You're in charge, and you don't need me nursemaiding you. Whatever the problem is, solve it. However you see fit. It'll do you good. Put hair on your chest. And that's not something that Clay is telling to Congress. It's just something that's going in his head, because he's not allowed to talk too much about S.H.I.E.L.D. because of confidentiality. This is an interesting layout. I think Larsen changed this page. This isn't something McFarlane probably would have done anyway that I can think of a time when he's done a layout quite like this. Larsen did a recent interview on my buddy Dave's channel, and Dave asked him about this issue.
He inked your cover, and then you did the interior.
Yes, and he had done kind of thumbnails for that, rough thumbnails that he drew, and they had sent me his originals for that. So they were just small little versions of those pages. I made some changes. I didn't go crazy with it, but I wanted to draw the Hulk more, and the Hulk was barely in it. So
I know. I
did I added like a big Hulk, like holding the page or something, and one of them just because I could draw the goddamn guy.
Larsen said he wanted to draw the Hulk so bad he just kind of added the Hulk in, because the Hulk isn't really in this issue. He died, or so we think. He died in the previous issue, and this is all just kind of fallout from that storyline. Pretty heavy moment here, though, with Betty. She's saying she's nauseous, and Rick's saying, I am too, but at least you're pregnant. You know, you've got an excuse. And she says, Rick, I'm thinking of not having the baby. And, you know, Rick's expression, the emote surprise lines, and then the hug. Pretty heavy stuff right there, really. And this is the second time in this run that Peter David has addressed the issue of choosing not to have a baby. This page again feels like a pretty McFarlane-y layout, but man, look at those big eyes. And McFarlane does draw kind of big eyes sometimes, and maybe it just didn't translate quite as well. I would really like to know how rough these layouts were. Was it just general panel layout with shapes? And as more people are watching across the country, Clay is coming across like kind of a hero. And did we already see the part with? Nope. He's coming across as kind of a hero to the American public. They think he did the right thing. He went rogue. He exposed something corrupt in the government, amassing weapons of mass destruction, one that created the Hulk. So the public is on his side, and there's even like a push to Clay for president. I like this panel. Politics? Moi? So the panel is funny, but it does kind of make it out like Clay was doing all this, to position himself for a run in politics, but I don't think that's what I get out of the rest of the book. So we go back to ground zero of the town, Middletown, where the bomb went off. And in the wreckage, at first you see this green hand and you think, oh, here comes the Hulk and he's green again. But it's the preacher that we met, or the priest we met from the previous issue. So he survived. Somehow he survived. So then we get to a newsroom scene, and we get to see Peter Parker and J. Jonah Jameson. Jameson is comparing the way Clay Quartermain is testifying and his charisma and stuff to Oliver North, who was a National Security Council member during a 1980s political controversy, the Iran-Contra affair. I guess that was pretty fresh. This is 1989, 88. So this was still pretty fresh at that time. That happened in 87. And then we get Mary Jane woman on the street. They're asking her about Clay, and she says, I think he's a fox. Not as cute as my husband, Pete, but a fox. Then you get Jameson side-eyeing Peter. This side looks McFarlane to me. This side less so. And then we get Betty's kind of recap of her, as a character. Her whole history. Her testifying. Yeah, this whole page looks McFarlane to me. This is definitely a McFarlane paste up. This is the McFarlane panel from 344. I think this is a paste up. I think all three of these are paste ups. Copy paste ups. But this has the McFarlane feel. This page less so. Then it kind of the immediate aftermath after the bomb goes off, because the last issue ended, it was just a big double page splash of the bomb going off. So here you get the barrier that the leader had put up swirling around, and Betty's, I guess, imagining Bruce and Hulk's face swirling around in the radiation. They're trying to get the dome to collapse, and finally, she said, it just goes off. It just disappears. Nothing they did made it happen. It just stopped. And they see the guy that was banging on the other side of the dome, the encyclopedia salesman, and he opened his eye. So he's a survivor. It's Clay's family again. They're showing bodies that they're finding in the aftermath. Obviously, mostly dead, but they mentioned there's a few survivors. This is the general that the leader kind of took control of 4 or 5 issues ago. They touched him, and he, his eyes started glowing, and he became a minion of the leader, so to speak. I think when he does that, it's more like when they're not being told what to do by the leader, they are in control of their own actions unless the leader told them to do something else. It's almost like a subconscious hypnotism. Anyhow, this face looks McFarlane-y. Just this panel, though, not the rest of it. Anyway, and he says that the survivors are not the lucky ones. Nick Fury shows up, and he wants to talk to Clay. I guess this hearing's already been going on. This is the first time Nick Fury shows up. I guess he had other things going on as they set up that miniseries. Anyhow, he basically says, look, Clay, the public loves you. They think you actually did the right thing, exposing all this, so the chances of you being prosecuted are 0. They're going to hand you over to S.H.I.E.L.D. to let us handle it however we're going to do it. And he said, well, what does that mean? He's like, well, we're going to do our own internal investigation into the gamma bomb thing. Well, what about me? And he grabs him by the ear. So a little Peter David comedy happening there. Rick Jones gets to testify. He's making some jokes because Rick Jones has been through a lot in his life. Not just, being there for the creation of the Hulk, but he was Cap's sidekick. He shared a body with Captain Marvel. He's been there with the Avengers. I mean, Rick Jones is our everyday man that has been doing extraordinary things since this moment here. And he basically says, without Doc Banner, I wouldn't be alive. Here's where I really see that Jim Sanders, the third ink again. Heavy, heavy, heavy right there. Heavy, heavy. Yeah, Larsen's a big Hulk fan. If you hear any interviews with him, he talks about how the Hulk really stands out as one of the first comics he bought. He owns tons of Herb Trimpe original art. He was probably so excited to get this assignment and just to find out, the Hulk's not really in it other than a couple of flashback panels. And one of them we're going to paste up a McFarlane piece. Anyway, another McFarlane-y looking layout here. So Rick actually goes on to explain when they got into Middletown and the factory where the bomb actually went off, and they just see what was left of the Hulk was just dust, and it gets blown away into the wind. Something else here, too, is Betty at the hospital. And she's at the hospital. She's listening. She's hearing the nurses station, listen to it or watch it on TV over there. And she hears Rick saying, now Bruce is gone and there's nothing left of him. And that's all there is to that. And then they call Mrs. Banner, and she says, no, thank you. I've changed my mind. And she leaves. Then we get Rick's reaction to it as he comes into the hotel room. And he's like, I heard you went to the hospital. I did, but I didn't. Woo! Not that I'm knocking it, but why not? Because I've seen so much death in my life. I've lost everyone I've ever loved. Mom, Dad, Glenn, Bruce, everyone. How can I kill now? The one remaining bit of the last love I've ever had. No more death, Rick. It stops here. No matter what the risk, it stops here. Again, pretty powerful, pretty heavy stuff, subject matter in general. I get the feeling that Peter David likes to touch on this issue, and I think I know where he probably stands on it. The 2 times he's addressed it, both instances, the woman decided to continue on. So, but I think the fact that he even wrote them having that choice says something. And then we're going to wrap up with the leader. The leader won. This story, the leader had this plan to destroy the Hulk, and he won. And that's how this storyline ends, this Ground Zero story. Here's the other survivors, and he drives off with them, and he says, "My new race is born, my greatest enemy is gone, my power base grows every day. All I need now is time." And that is the end of the Ground Zero story. It wraps up the McFarlane era of this with the villain winning. And when I really think about that, it's like, man, you don't usually see the villain straight up win often in kind of mainstream comics like this. You may see him kind of have a momentary victory early on in the story, like stealing the Gamma Bomb or something like that. But generally, the hero averts it and sends the villain packing. Even Doom, most of the time, gets sent packing. But in this case, the leader actually wins. And we don't see the leader again for a long time because he says, all I need now is time. So Peter David at this point, done with the leader for the moment, but setting up something for the future. Of course, the Hulk is dead, so what's going to happen in this title anyway? All right, touch on this letter page because this letters page covers issue 340. And the response was, well, people seem to like it. Almost every one of them mentioned McFarlane inking himself and how good it was. I found that to be pretty impressive. A lot of people had comments about the Hulk's healing factor and that Wolverine was able to, cut him and scratch his hide on this. So there was a lot of kind of internal debate, even in the letters column itself about, or the letters itself, just about how can that happen. The first time they met, Wolverine couldn't even scratch him. And nobody really mentions that, the Green Hulk was just different. And the Gray Hulk is a little diminished, at least initially, as he gets angrier. He gets somewhat stronger. His stamina doesn't run out, but his metabolism heals really fast. That wasn't really a thing with the Green Hulk. Everyone goes on and on about how great the battle was, though. Somebody in this one pointed out that they said they wished the Hulk had just killed Wolverine because he appears to have died anyway in the Fall of the Mutant story. Kind of interesting. Now that when you compare the two, the Hulk died in this. The X-Men were dying over in Uncanny X-Men. What was going on at Marvel at the time? I liked this comment too. Said, how about some Baxter paper to show off McFarlane's artwork? It's a good idea because, this paper quality and print quality of this era of Marvel is pretty awful, except for some of their more prestige books like the Wolverine ongoing would get. So it is kind of funny, though, that both the ongoing Hulk, the ongoing Amazing Spider-Man, neither one of those would get bumped up, or even X-Men would get bumped up to better quality paper. It was when they would launch a new book that they would give it that premium feel. This one was probably the most detailed letter, talking about how Peter David did such a good job of making Wolverine stay in character with what Chris Claremont had been doing in Uncanny X-Men. Pointed out that most of the time when these characters cross over into another book, the book they're appearing in, the writer doesn't usually take the time to keep that personality, things they've been doing in line. They just want to use the character for an issue. So a lot of praise on Peter David here, a lot of praise on McFarlane, as to be expected. I found all that interesting. It aligned a lot with the video that Dave and I made discussing it. It's kind of funny, except one person did say the coloring was good, and Dave and I pretty much trashed on the coloring. And that's pretty much it for this issue. And the Hulk is dead, so no more of these videos. I'm just kidding. You know what's coming next. It's Joe Fixit. I'm not going to skip the Joe Fixit era. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the McFarlane era. I hope you stick around for the Joe Fixit era. Until next time, read your comics.